First, I would like to thank the organizers of the Global Soil Week for inviting Habitat to contribute to this important session. What I would like to do in this presentation is first say a few words about Habitat's mandate and how we address sustainable urbanization, and then focus on the issue of declining densities and how we want to address this through compact, integrated and connected cities. And finally, I would like to broaden the perspective towards what is the global outlook on these issues, particularly with regard to the Sustainable Development Goals. Habitat is an agency that's focusing on two mandates: adequate shelter for all and sustainable urban development. This mandate has evolved over the past 40 years, and there are some important milestones like the Habitat 1 conference in Vancouver, Habitat 2 conference in Istanbul, which had a focus on local authority, collaboration and enabling, and now we're working towards the Habitat 3 conference in 2016, which we hope will adopt a new urban agenda. Our partners are governments, local authorities, private sector, civil society and research institutions, but we are governed by a governing body that comprises of 58 member states of the United Nations. Our projects are all over the world, but mainly concentrated in Africa, Asia and Latin America. We have a budget of about $200 million per year in these countries. In terms of key issues we are addressing, we need to recognize that no country ever has been able to attain mid-income status without going through an intensive process of urbanization. And there is now a group of countries in the world that are currently at a rate of approximately 30% of urbanization, and that are growing over the next 15 to 20 years towards more 60 to 70% of urbanization. And the way this growth is going to happen is critical for the human well-being, is critical for economic performance and social development. This is happening in mainly two continents, in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, as well as Asia, South and Southeast Asia. On the map that you see on the screen, the white spots are the areas where the largest urbanization change is going to happen in the next 2 decades. And in terms of numbers, we are talking about a transformation from towards about 60% of the world being urbanized in total, and this is going along with the development of slums in the world. And one of the big challenges of our agency is try to find ways in which the increase of urbanization is not going along with a drastic increase of slum formation, which is currently the trend. So we have heavy concentration of new urbanization in Africa and Asia. We also have focus on growth in medium-sized cities. Actually, 62% of the world's urban population is living in these cities and will also grow in these cities. There will be much fewer people living in mega cities, and we have also strong trend of informality, metropolitanization and suburbanization, which are going along with this urbanization trend. So this leads to certain patterns of development. In many cases, monofunctional, single-use housing far from urban centers, which leads to segregation, which leads to large distance between housing and other elements of production. It also produces this kind of huge contrast between slum settlements and settlements that are monofunctional, either offices separate or housing separate or industry separate. And these huge contrasts are clearly unsustainable in the long run. Along with this, there's a trend of climate change, which is partly induced by urbanization, and also urban centers are bearing the brunt of climate change through different phenomena like sea level rise for coastal cities, cyclones, flooding, etc. So this is the picture we are dealing with, and let's now focus a moment on what this means for densities. We have seen over the past century a steady decline in densities of all regions, of urban settlements in all regions. And this graph shows clearly how a selection of cities have really drastically declined in density over the past century as a result of what we would like to call the 20th century urban model. This is true for all regions in the world, for Europe, for United States, for developing countries. Of course, starting from different starting points, densities are decreasing in all major regions. This is an example of Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, where the population grew on an average 1.2% per year over the past 15 years, but the urban footprint grew by more than 3% over the same per year over the same period. And this leads to an unsustainable use of urban space. And if this continues in a similar fashion over the next 2 decades, there will be significant diseconomies of scale and significant environmental and social negative externalities related to this urbanization. Another way of measuring this is the Metropolitan Containment Index, which actually looks at the difference of growth of the core of a city with the belt of a city. And in most of the cities, there is a much faster growth of the belt area as opposed to the core. But in others, there is this more rapid growth of the core. And this graph actually shows how you compare these two growths, and this can be termed into containment and a containment index. This also symbolizes one of the paradigms, the predominant paradigms of trying to contain urban development through intensification of density. Another illustration of that is how cities and the transport-related emissions in cities are related or correlated with density. For higher densities, you find lower transport-related emissions, which is going to be a major trend for the future, especially with higher energy prices. So these are all concerns related to density and the possibility of containment. But these containment policies have pros as well as cons. They may yield benefits in terms of energy, in terms of environmental protection, in terms of economic performance, but also they will raise the price of land and make shelter more expensive. They go against the current preferences of urban dwellers, and there's a number of negative aspects related to it regarding the implementation of containment policies. And there's a new paradigm that has been floated over the past few years based on extensive research on how cities are growing, and this is called the making room paradigm, which is perhaps a more realistic strategy for cities and metropolitan areas in the way they expand. So we have here two different paradigms, and the second one is characterized with more realistic projections of growth, looking at fairly generous metropolitan limits, protection of public space as a long-term sustainability factor, and a strong grid of arterial roads that are guiding this growth. So this is mainly promoted by, based on research by Slomo Angel and others, and projects space for cities in the next 20 years. So how can we combine these two trends, the containment model and the making room paradigm? And I'd like to focus now on how Habitat is viewing its work on, especially on urban planning and design, in the next couple of years on how to find a more sustainable way of urban growth. We would like to characterize this, the way we want to see sustainable urban development going, moving from sprawl, segregation and congestion towards compact, integrated and connected cities. The words compact, connected and integrated can be measured through density, obviously, through street network, through the way different socioeconomic groups are living apart, living together, mixed, different functions are mixed or not mixed. They can also be measured in the way in which processes of urban planning and design are more or less inclusive and involve different actors in decision making. So the slide on, which is now on the screen shows these two different extremes, a kind of a model, let's call it a business as usual model of urban development, which has single use expansion, relatively low density, with specialization of functions, towards a much more compact, much more integrated way of urban development that still provides space for expansion that is needed in many cities in the world. So we have captured our strategic objective for the next 6 years fully in line with these principles, and our focus will be on improving policies, plans and designs for more compact, integrated and connected cities that foster equitable, sustainable urban development and our resilience to climate change. Importantly, at the city, regional and national levels, there are actions needed at all of these levels. I would like to now focus on a few of these actions that we are proposing from the larger scales, from the national scale down to the neighborhood scale. And these include national urban policies, city-region planning, planned cities extensions and land readjustment, with a few examples of each. In terms of national urban policies, Australia has recently developed what we consider a good way of organizing urban space across the country, not according to sectoral lines, but more holistically along clusters such as urban productivity, urban livability, etc. Also, Lebanon is a country that has developed a national spatial framework, which is important to balance growth in the future, and is now developing a number of instruments to implement the strategy across its territory. So this is important action at the national level. At the city-region level, also action is needed to regain urban advantage. And this is the level of action where most of the sustainability factors are at play. This is where energy, water and food are coming together and can be managed in a more integrated way across a city region or metropolitan region. And we have recently launched a set of guidebooks that highlight some good cases with different strategies at the city region level. And two of the examples I would like to highlight are one, Hangzhou in China, that has developed a new strategy that is looking at ecosystems as working along with ecosystems in urban development, as opposed to the earlier urban development in this region. And a second one is Medellin in Colombia, where the metro cable system is trying to bring neighborhoods closer together through innovative technologies, which is leveraging actually the actual density of the city. So these are strategies that are taken at the metropolitan level and can foster this new urban agenda. Then when we get to the city itself, this is an overview of different strategies, which are all related to the need to extend cities. And there we emphasize that it's not only a matter of extension, physical extension of territory, but also of densification, infill, harnessing of public space or improving public space, and then also looking at possibility of peripheral poles and new cities. We see now also a number of countries that have taken initiatives in creating new cities, starting from scratch with strong sustainability considerations. And we believe it's a mix of these 5 strategies that will yield a proper urban vision for the coming decades. Finally, at the neighborhood level, land readjustment, we see this as an important instrument to make this happen and to implement this possible extensions, especially how you deal with private land and how you can readjust private land for creating more space to make these extensions efficient and equitable in the long run. The last part of my presentation, I would like to focus on how can we translate this agenda at the global level. Essentially, why do we need an urban sustainable development goal? Rio Plus 20 gave us the future we want with a strong recognition that holistic and integrated urban planning can contribute to sustainable development. It's the first time that General Assembly document recognizes the positive value of urbanization as a driving force. This agenda ranks average amongst member states. There are other topics that seem to be more seen as more urgent, such as energy, water, food, and others that are seen as less urgent, such as governance and land management. So cities are somewhere in between there, and we believe that combining different of these aspects would really go a long way in stimulating this new urban agenda. There have been different moves recently to articulate this. The high-level panel report recognized that cities are where the battle for sustainable urbanization will be won or lost. But at the same time, they do not propose an urban goal. They propose a number of scattered targets that address urban issues. But we believe that there is need for a holistic goal dealing with urban issues to take advantage of this window of opportunity we have in the next 20 years to put extra emphasis on sustainable urbanization. And Habitat, but also local government associations, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and others are now on a campaign for an Urban SDG, for an Urban Sustainable Development Goal. And the reason why is that this will allow to focus attention on urban matters as a priority and not as a sectoral approach. It will also empower mayors and other urban actors to prioritize their work within a global agenda, and will also allow to have special attention to issues such as urban poverty and create opportunities for innovative infrastructure and service delivery. And very importantly, it's the only way to also look at land use, urban land use and resilience in a holistic and integrated manner. So we are proposing a goal with 11 targets. Other organizations are supporting this. Sometimes we have different ways of formulating the targets, fewer targets, different types of targets, but we believe that it needs to be a goal with a number of targets that have a spatial emphasis, such as urban land cover, which is the focus of this presentation, as well as public space and how to deal with slums, for instance, but also a number of targets that are related to service delivery and infrastructure, which could either be included in this urban goal or could also be included in other goals if there were to be a goal on energy or a goal on water. So this is an open agenda. It's up for discussion, and we are now working on documenting each of these targets, the rationale, the possible baselines and measurement methods. This is indeed a global agenda. It is shared by different organizations. Our governing council has prioritized this, And we're going to work further on that at the World Urban Forum, the 7th World Urban Forum in Medellin in April next year, and then hope that this agenda will come together as part of the discussions on the Sustainable Development Goals, and then finally at the Habitat 3 conference in 2016. So we call upon all of you, researchers, policymakers, practitioners, to also integrate these values and these ideas in your work, and also mobilize your own delegations in preparation of a Habitat 3 conference. I would like to thank you for your attention.